Welcome to the Aging Well podcast, where we explore the science, stories, and strategies behind living a longer, healthier, and more purposeful life. My guest is Dr. Eric Fete, a trailblazer in the world of preventative health, peak performance, and age management. As the founder of PrimeX and a former ER physician, Dr. Fete saw firsthand how the healthcare system focuses more on managing illness than preventing it. That inspired his shift toward helping people reclaim control of their health through personalized plans focused on nutrition, supplements, hormone optimization, and lifestyle medicine. From muscle health and sleep to circadian rhythms and testosterone, this conversation goes deep into what it really takes to age strong, stay vital, and live fully on your own terms to age well. Dr. Fete, welcome to the Aging Well podcast. You started out in emergency medicine. What made you kind of pivot from that to age management and preventative health?
Yeah. So thank you, gentlemen, for having me on the show. I appreciate your time. I'm a big superhero guy my whole life. So it's like, I always like, what's my secret origin story? Right. So that's kind of how I spew it, but exactly what you said. So yeah, I mean, I was always in health and fitness my whole life. My parents were both teachers. So I kind of learned from them to kind of like learn about learning. Right. And my dad was a science teacher. So I guess I got geeked out on science and eventually went to med school, and I'm like, I picked emergency medicine. It sounded cool, sounded fun, sounded different. And I enjoyed it. It was, very high paced, and learned a lot. So you learn how to take care of pretty much anything that goes through the door, kind of like the MacGyver of the medical world, right? You could save a life, you could fix, treat a cold, or, whatever, see some crazy stuff. I got a lot of good stories. So, but I think what happened was, after years of doing that, I start seeing people obviously very sick. But when you start seeing, people getting more and more sick when they shouldn't be, when you start seeing people in their 30s, 20s and 30s and 40s that on 20 medications, overweight, disabled, diabetic, for no reason other than the fact they didn't know any better, I thought this could all be prevented with, proper choice, better lifestyle. And not always their fault. Sometimes they just didn't know, or they weren't educated, or just, poor home life or whatever. And I thought there's gotta be a way to prevent this, so I kind of, with my background, I started delving into that. So when I left ER, I was working with another physician. We had like a kind of more of a cosmetic surgical clinic for a while. We did a lot of vein treatments and aesthetics, but we got into like stem cell treatments, regenerative medicine. And then I started learning about hormone therapy and advanced bioidentical hormone therapy. And then I got into peptides and started learning, just open doors. I started learning about functional medicine and gut health and so much more. So that I just basically started my own practice, just doing the preventive side of things. And, once it's kind of like, everything that happened the last 5 years, you swallow the red pill, you kind of see what's on the other side of the door. You go down a bunch of rabbit holes and start realizing what's really going on, the politics and economics of medicine. And having been there, done that, I can totally see it from a different lens now. And traditional medicine is great for what it does, but not so good at preventing illness, right? And keeping us healthy. So that's it. It just jazzed with my style, my attitude about life and health in general. So I really embraced it and doubled down. And that's kind of how I got out of it. So I still can appreciate both sides of the equation and use both tools as needed. But yeah, that's what kind of got me going. That was my big motivator, is trying to help these people and getting them off the pills and the surgeries, and helping them, like teaching them about lifestyle, how they can optimize their health and feel better naturally, without doing all this stuff, and prevent all these diseases, an ounce of prevention worth a pound of cure, right? So, if I could keep people, out of the ER or out of the operating room, just by some simple measures, huge difference in what you could do with people. So, and then when I start seeing that happen with my patients, it kind of reinforced that. So that's kind of what brought me here.
Well, what would you say some of the biggest health problems were that you saw in the ER that could have been prevented with the right approach?
Yeah, great question. So a lot. I mean, I think kind of that patient I alluded to probably was a good summary of it. So I think, when it comes to like, as we now know about how so many diseases are a result of like, classic stuff like inflammation, insulin resistance, poor lifestyle habits, abnormal circadian rhythms. I think those are the most common ones. I mean, because I think inflammation, is probably one of the root causes of so many things, and that could be hinges on so many things. And a lot of that's just lifestyle. So it's just, when people are, unfortunately, it kind of ties into like the world we live in, right? Our genes just haven't caught up with our lifestyle. So too many of us are sitting inside in front of Wi-Fi and blue light all day. We're not getting outside, looking at the sun, getting movement, getting in the forest, touching the ground, interacting with other people, eating processed foods. People can sit on their couch all day, push a button, have food delivered to them, change the channel. They don't even have to leave their house. And it's just not natural. It's just not healthy. So I think most of the diseases are things like diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, metabolic syndrome, PCOS. All these things could be, to answer your question, there's no one answer. It's like all of them. But I think the common theme is inflammation, abnormal circadian rhythms, and just bad lifestyle in general. You know what I mean? So, like I said, our modern environment is very toxic. All the nutrients are leached out of our soils, processed crap in our food. There's glyphosate everywhere, blue light everywhere. Stifled air, controlled temperature environments. It's just not what what we're meant to be as human beings. We're meant to be to deal with hot and cold and changing weather and actual air and actual food, things like that. We've kind of gotten away from that. So it's a complex answer to your question, but yeah, I think all of the above.
So we have added sleep to our kind of 6 pillars of aging well over the last year. And I've been in my own battle, and I'll probably go into that a little bit later in the conversation, but trying to get my doctor to just get me tested for sleep apnea and all that. I mean, it's been a year-long process. Whereas if, I wanted to take a pill for cholesterol, I could have statins today.
Yeah.
So you are very passionate about the role of sleep and circadian rhythms. You just mentioned circadian rhythms, I think 2 or 3 times there in that last little talk. But how do these impact aging and our overall wellness?
Yeah, great question. And if in case, we forget, remind me to circle around with you or offline about the sleep stuff. I mean, you probably already know about them, but there's a lot of cool at-home sleep apnea tests that are less cumbersome than all the wiring and stuff. So there's a lot of cool ways to test that. So I can definitely give you some resources if you haven't found them already. So yeah, I'm big on sleep. Like I said, in my superhero analogy, like Superman with the red S on his chest, right? I say the double S, sleep and stress, are kind of like my 2 big ones I always attack first. When I talk to people, because like you said, everybody wants like Americans. We want it here, we want it now, we want it fast. Everyone wants the quick fix, right? What's the magical goji berry supplement or the peptide or whatever? And I will use those, but those are kind of like the tip of the pyramid, right? I always start with the foundational stuff, and sometimes people don't want to hear that because it takes a little bit of work, right? We got to, eating right and sleeping right and working out and all these things, but it's foundational. You got to do it. If somebody just wants a pill or a shot and they're not going to do that, I'm not going to work with them because you have to do the whole thing. So I think sleep and stress are 2 of the big ones. But for now, like as you mentioned, sleep is definitely foundational, and it really affects everything, right? As you guys know, but a lot of the listeners, I'm sure everybody knows. Yeah, I know I need to sleep, but a lot of people think it's just because of going to affect their ability to concentrate the next day, which of course it can, but it affects so much more than that, right? It can affect their appetite. It affects all your hormones, specifically things like leptin and ghrelin, which are hormones in your brain makes. It can affect and this is why when you're tired, people are always like, I'm always craving bad stuff, right? Chocolates and cookies and donuts. Well, that's why it throws off your appetite hormones, your leptin, your ghrelin, your GLP, all these different hormones that your body normally makes can affect your appetite. It affects your cortisol, one of your stress hormones, which can lead to weight gain, more inflammation, and throw things off the next day. And at night is when you make all your beneficial hormones. That's when your body heals, it repairs itself. It's when your body makes growth hormone to help you, shed fat and to heal your body, to get into deep sleep. And so if you're going to bed late, you're toss and turn all night, you're not getting those deep sleep patterns. You're not getting optimal growth hormone. You're not getting healing of your tissues. You're not getting a process called autophagy, where your body's healing, breaking down all the damaged cells and building new cells. You're getting lymphatic drainage, where your brain's healing and removing all the toxins, inflammations, and therefore you're not going to consolidate all your memories. And so it can affect your learning. It can affect your brain health. And of course, that all these things can affect your longevity. If you're not sleeping well, you can literally take years off your life. So not only can you age faster, get more inflamed, you're going to gain weight, you're going to be tired, you're going to have suboptimal body composition. All these things just lays the groundwork for the stuff we were just talking about a few minutes ago with inflammation and weight gain, metabolic, and you're on the track to insulin resistance, prediabetes, obesity, and then which is going to lead to all the diseases. So it can literally affect your health in many, many ways. So it's foundational. I mean, there's a lot of other things that it does too, but those are the big ones. So when people are like, well, I want to lose weight, I want to look better, I want to sleep better. Well, I'm like, well, if you're not sleeping, you got to fix that, and sleep disorders are becoming more and more, people are getting more aware of it. Most people have started to hear more about sleep apnea, about restless legs or disordered sleep, movement patterns at night, all these different things. Or I think more and more people are talking about and getting more aware of it. So I'm picking up a lot of these things with a lot of my patients. And one of the first things I ask is, do you snore? Do you have any concerns about sleep apnea, or how do you feel the next day? And I'm definitely recommending a lot more sleep studies, or at least some kind of overnight recording of something to get a baseline, kind of get that assessment, because sometimes that's forgotten about, right? Or it's just not picked up, and they're doing everything else, but they're not getting that looked at. So that can sometimes be the missing piece.
Yeah. I mean, I'm an exercise physiologist, so I've always, exercise and diet have always been the top pillars. But lately it's like, I'm leaning more into, sleep is getting a little bit more important than the exercise, because for me, I think as soon as I hit 60 is when suddenly I noticed that my sleep wasn't as restorative as it should be. And I started tracking it more. I wear a Garmin watch, every night, and, look at those sleep scores every morning and trying to figure out, okay, what did I not do the night before that disrupted my sleep? And sometimes I'm doing things perfect. I mean, I'm gotten all my sleep hygiene in line. And so at that point, it's like, it's got to be sleep apnea. There's got to be more to it than this, because I'm not losing weight. I'm exercising well, but I'm not quite recovering the way I used to. And it's not because I'm older. I don't buy into that BS. I think it's like, it's my hormones. My hormones aren't regulated. My cortisol level is probably too high. I got tested for testosterone and it's in a normal range, but I don't know where your opinion would be with that, where normal when you're my age is like, yeah, but is that optimal? But
normal's not always optimal. Jeff,
right.
Yes. Offline, send me your labs. I'll give you, I'll go over some stuff with you, just, and see what we can do for sure. Not just the hormones, but everything for sure. Just let me know. But yeah, you're right. And, I think paying attention to that is key, because like you said, sometimes that could be, something is off there, and it very much ties into exercise, right? Because a lot of us, I see so many people, even myself, are like, well, I've got to do this and I've got to do this. And they're like, if they didn't sleep well, they're like, well, I still got to stick to my routine. And like, I'm big into like, auto regulation, right? So as you know, it's like, if you're not feeling it and you didn't sleep, well, that's probably not the day to go crush a leg day, right? Or if you're not feeling it, then do it, back off, do a light day, just walk, do something, listen to your body, kind of thing. And a lot of people don't. And so, yeah, I think, at a minimum, I mean, nowadays you can get like, just apps, just to record yourself snoring. It's not obviously a sleep study, but if you're making a lot of noises or gasps or something, or a lot of movement, that can be a clue, another data point. Like you said, the Garmin's, the Oura Rings, they're all really good. They give you a lot of good information for sure, especially like HRV, movement, your heart rate and things like that. I think they're getting better in terms of like the sleep stages. I don't think they're there yet, but they're getting there. So I think it's all data, right? And of course, getting a sleep study is going to be best for like apnea and things like that. But these are all data points that you can compile. And more importantly, how do you feel the next day? And I think on the flip side, some people can go a little overboard and just, I think, use them too much. So like for me, like I have an Oura, but I haven't even worn it in months. It's like, I think some people get a little too attached, even if it's on, you turn the Wi-Fi off, so you're not getting that non-native EMF, but some people get so much, that almost freaks them out too much. And the first thing, kind of like their phone, first thing you're doing in the morning is checking, like, how did I sleep? I'm like, well, it's like same thing with like blood work, like, well, what's my lab show? Well, how do you feel? Because sometimes it's like, they don't match. So you really got to listen to your body, so, but yeah, I think they're still good to use, just to kind of, like you said, you sometimes take some trial and error to see what's going on, what's affecting it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point, because even when I was wearing my CPAP, because I have sleep apnea, there was times I would wake up and I was like, man, I felt like I got no sleep. I'm more tired now than I ever was without the CPAP. So just it's interesting that you're bringing that up.
Yeah, and I think some people, I've read a lot on pros and cons of the CPAP. Some people swear by it and they love it, and other people are like, well, it's not very natural. It's kind of like Band-Aid for the problem, right? And I've read both points of view, and some people love it, some people. I think there's a lot of other things, especially if it's mild, or there's some other things you could do, right? There's a lot more strategies out there. There's all kinds of little devices to put in your mouth, or you get a mouthpiece custom made by your dentist. There's like the Aerovance, a Boingo, they call it. It's like a nose thing you put in. A lot of people do like mouth tape. People do like, talk about like breathing therapy, right? People have heard like CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, but same thing with people who actually have like breathing coaches to help you breathe properly. Like Buteyko breathing has been around for a long time. Like there's this, there's several books I've read, but there's this one it's about snoring and sleep. And it just talks about breathing techniques, like how to breathe slow and low. That's been popularized by, Breathe. I think it was James Nestor. And there's another author about breathing techniques, about how so many of us overbreathe. We don't belly breathe. We're chest breathing too fast, breathing too deep, and it's affecting our carbon dioxide levels. And by improving your carbon dioxide levels during the day, you can actually learn how to breathe slower and better at night, so you don't get that overbreathing. And it's because we're overbreathing that we're getting it, and it works much better than CPAP, and it's more natural. But it takes work, it takes practice. Right. So that's an area I've been reading about and trying to practice myself of late, because that's a big area of misconception too. And I think some people have had a lot of success just doing that.
Let's talk muscle.
I'd love to.
All right. How does muscle health influence aging, longevity, libido, and performance?
Yeah, this is my wheelhouse, man, because that's my trademark thing. I call muscle medicine is my thing, So it's like, because there's not too many people talking about this. I'm like, it's kind of like, so I'm like, I just made it up one day. I'm like, I'm going to call muscle medicine, just focusing on muscle, because most people think of muscle as like, well, it's just muscle, right? It just makes you look good at the beach or, whatever. I'm like, well, no, it's more than that. It's muscle is actually an endocrine organ. One of the largest, actually. I think in the last number of years, we've become aware of fat cells, right? We used to think of fat was just there, it's ugly, but actually fat is an endocrine organ too. It secretes adipokines, which are cytokines made from the fat cells, which are chemicals, cellular messengers that transmit information and signals, kind of like hormones. They affect other parts of the body in good or bad ways. Well, muscles secrete myokines, which are very beneficial to the body. And I think this is why everybody knows, like, oh yeah, exercise is great for the body, but you list all the benefits of it. It's like a super pill, right? One of the reasons why it does this is because of these myokines. When you use your muscle, whether it's strength training, cardio, it affects your mitochondria, which has many effects on your health and your longevity. And then these myokines, of course, are secreted, which have numerous effects on the body. There's a huge list of them. I did like a little PowerPoint like a couple years ago. I presented at the Olympia, did a talk about that. And it's like all the different effects on the body. There's some research papers out there that I pulled a lot of this information from in terms of like improving brain health, improving bone health, building stronger bones, improving your liver, improving your intestinal health. Secreting these things like called irisin, IL-6, IL-15, MyoD, all these funky names, but these are all like chemicals that are secreted by the muscles, especially when you do some type of training. And these myokines signal the pathways to improve, for example, gut health, like GLP-1 in your gut. Like everybody's aware of like semaglutide, Ozempic, and these peptides that you can give. And I've used them myself, but you make your own GLP-1, and myokines actually stimulate your body to make more. It helps you make, like I said, IL-6 and irisin, which helps you not only just improve your muscle health, but improves your insulin sensitivity, improves your glucose disposal in terms of pulling blood sugar into your muscles, to improve your insulin sensitivity. And we talked about what a big problem insulin resistance and prediabetes is in the country and the world right now. So it can improve that. It can improve your bone health and do so many other things. So muscle is very metabolically active. Most people are a little bit aware of that by adding muscle, or at least maintaining your muscle mass as we get older, you're going to improve your body's ability to handle blood sugar. You're going to improve your metabolism. You're going to burn a lot more calories. So it's one of the best ways to improve body composition in fat and not get metabolic syndrome and prediabetes by maintaining a healthy muscle mass, because it'll improve your metabolism, get rid of blood sugar, lower your insulin, and improve your disposal of lipids and so many other factors. And it also reduces inflammation. And as I mentioned, it improves your mitochondrial health. And a lot of people, of course, have been talking a lot about mitochondria. And that's another hour of conversation right there. But the bottom line is that by maintaining your muscle mass or improving it somewhat, especially as we get older, you can improve your metabolic health and prevent all these diseases we've been talking about. So it's not just so you look good at the beach. I mean, it'll help with that too, but you don't have to get big and buff. You could just have optimal, healthy muscle mass, and more importantly, functional muscle mass. You want to be strong and improve strength. A lot of studies clearly show that just strength is one of the leading indicators of healthy aging. So you don't have to be big and muscular. You could just have good functional muscles and maintain your strength. And that'll improve your metabolism and also prevent, help with balance, help with your ability to handle your body in motion, which, a lot of people, as we get older, we have problems with balance, our bones. And when elderly, in people that are elderly, when they fall, they get injuries, they get broken bones, they're in bad shape, and they very frequently die or are disabled or in a home. Well, if you can prevent that with hormone optimization, with muscle, keeping your muscle optimal, you're going to improve your balance, improve your body's ability to handle a stumble or a trip, so you can catch yourself and maintain your balance, and maintain your overall functional capacity, so you can do your activities of daily living. So I'm big on muscle. And as we get older, we lose muscle, right? We get what's called sarcopenia. We lose muscle and we gain fat, which is the opposite of what we should be doing. So my goal is to do the opposite. I want to maintain muscle mass and burn the fat as we get older, and maintain that lean, strong physique as we get older. And this is going to prevent all these things we've been talking about. So I'm big on that. And my guys it's usually an easier talk, and my women, they get it too. It's a little bit more of a push because they're not used to eating a lot of protein or weights. They still have a lot of those myths out there about muscle. So I have to kind of dispel those myths. So muscle is a big one. And that's my big thing, is just maintaining that muscle mass for all those benefits and so much more. But
it's almost like you want people to age like an athlete. It sounds like.
Kind of. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the goal is just to maintain our physique, to do the opposite, kind of what we were talking about at the beginning, right? Instead of like sitting around all day and getting fat like that stereotype, right? It should be the opposite. And you look at like how we're meant to be,
Right.
We were talking about like the ancestral origins and circadian rhythms. You look at a lot of these native peoples and the blue zones, et cetera. And like these people that live out in the nowhere, right, without technology, that's how they look lean and they're healthy and they're got good teeth, decent muscle tone until they're, in their 70s, 80s and such, right? And so it can be done. That's kind of, I think, how we're meant to be. Our modern lifestyle is kind of literally killing us, I think. So.
Speaking of circadian rhythm and sleep, the best sleep I will get is actually if I don't eat after like 6:37, right around. That's the best sleep I'll ever get.
Oh, definitely.
So
yeah. In the last few months, I've been really digging into quantum biology, the study of that. So that's why I've always been aware of it and talking about the circadian aspect. But there's a lot more science about it now. I've been really digging deep into it, and there's a lot to that. It's kind of like again, like when the sun goes down, you shouldn't be eating, and you should be getting ready for bed. And when the sun comes up, you should probably be getting up and getting outside, looking at the sun, and starting your day. So it's kind of the opposite of what we've been doing of late. Everybody's been fasting all morning and skipping breakfast and eat snacking, and like I'm always in the last number of years I've kind of been, say it's a tool, but I'm kind of like the opposite. I like to be the contrarian, right? Build the muscle, get up, eat breakfast, get outside, kind of thing. And it's like, eat a big breakfast, you tend to have less cravings later. You're going to lose more weight. It's more in line with our circadian rhythms, our digestive juices, and our metabolism is more prime. We're more insulin sensitive during the morning, the afternoon than the evening. And to your point, at night, when it gets dark, we probably shouldn't be eating. And you're right. I think when you stay at night, that's what I tell my patients is like, don't eat at least, 2, 3, preferably 3 or 4 or 5 hours before you go to bed, because it takes time to digest. And when you're digesting, you're not sleeping well. So you should be nice and empty. Now your body can focus on healing, sleeping, getting that deep sleep. If you're digesting food, you're diverting resources. You're not going to sleep well. When you eat, you're going to spike your insulin and do all these things. Your digestive capacity is going to be going up. You're not going to make growth hormone at night to help you repair. Your leptin is going to be signaling. Is it going to be off? And leptin is kind of like the master hormone, right? And that controls everything. It's very misunderstood. But by improving your leptin, you're going to get all your other hormones optimized to get restorative sleep. To your point, Corbin, you're going to sleep a lot deeper. You're going to sleep better because your body's doing what it's meant to do. It's going to bed empty and you're healing and recovering. Your hormones are going to be optimized. You're going to sleep way better. And some people have a hard time doing. They have to kind of back off and kind of adjust to it. Slowly backing up those eating patterns. But that's key for sure.
Yeah, we're really big on the weight training as well. And it was one of those things, I was trained in exercise physiology in the mid 80s and it was cardio all the time.
Yeah.
And I had to unlearn so much of that. And fortunately, I didn't have as much to unlearn as some people, but I'm really pushing, you can't do cardio if you don't have the muscle mass. And, you can keep doing it. You're going to get weaker and weaker. Your cardiovascular system is going to begin to drop off anyhow. So get the muscles going, get the good sleep, get the good nutrition going. And that's kind of my next question is how do you help people navigate nutrition and diet in a way that actually leads to sustainable fat and weight loss?
Yeah, great question. And I agree. And like I tell people, like if you love to run and that, do what you love, and cardio is important, but I'm more big on, like I said, strength training is more integral. You're going to improve your body composition, your metabolic markers way better with strength training. You just cardio as an add-on. And my minimum for people is like, especially that are busy, like if you just hit the weights a few times a week and walk every day, get those, 7, 8, 9,000 steps and you're going to be good. Obviously doing more cardio is better, but you don't have to crush it every day. But in terms of like diet, lifestyle, eating aspect is big. Number one, I really want to get that, fix their light environment, their circadian rhythms, like we're talking about, get their sleep dialed in, getting up with the sun going down, getting to bed, like turning off the lights, the blue light, wearing blue blockers, dimming the lights, night shift mode on your devices, and just really kind of getting into that good sleep pattern, priming your body for a good deep sleep. And then doing the flip the next day, and that's going to help with appetite and their metabolism and so much more. So the lifestyle aspect, I think, comes first. But everybody, of course, wants to, well, what about eating? And that's important as well, because not just obviously for food and fueling your body, but food is a what we call a Zeitgeber too, right? It's in training your body to do certain things at the right time. So heat and cold, light, food, exercise, these are all things that kind of get your body's circadian rhythms dialed in, not just your brain, but every organ in your body has its own kind of clock, a body clock or circadian rhythm. So by tuning those all at the right time, you can optimize your health, your body composition, and so much more. So when I tell people, I say, I don't like to put people on diets. I mean, because most people have a negative connotation of diet, right? I give them a nutrition plan, right? Just use food as a fuel, as a tool, right? So for me, I'm a simple guy. I like to keep things as simple as possible. So I just tell everybody, again, going back to muscle medicine, number one, focus on protein and fiber. That should be two core things, right? The typical 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of protein per pound of body weight is a kind of a classic, and it works. And so if you get anywhere close to that, you're going to be on point. So I tell everybody, look, just look at a plate like a clock, right? Half that plate should be a big pile of vegetables, big piece of meat, and then the other, on 1/4 of it, and the other 4 can be like a fat or a carb, one or the other, like a half an avocado or maybe half a sweet potato or something like that. Keep it simple. So, protein with every meal, lots of fiber, vegetables. You can have carbs, but make it mostly should be vegetables and some fruits, like dark colored fruits, especially because they're loaded with polyphenols, dark chocolate, like we were talking about. Like starchy carbs, like sweet potatoes, rice is totally fine. But if you're trying to lose weight or improve your insulin sensitivity, maybe you should just probably focus on timing that around your workouts, and then the rest of the day not do it. And that's it. Keep it simple. So I tell people, beef, preferably grass fed, beef, chicken, eggs, fish, lots of fish is very good, especially like the smash fish, omega-3s, rich fatty fat. Fish is fantastic for your brain, for inflammation, metabolic control, and so much more. Some people don't like it. Well, they can always do an omega-3 supplement, but I think it's always best through food if you can. Like I said, lots of vegetables, lots of dark berries. Fat should be simple. You'll get some of that through your meats, eggs, and then maybe like avocado, olive oil, coconut oil. That's really about it. That's really all you need. Coconut oil is great for the gut. It's very anti-inflammatory, antibacterial, antiviral. Same thing with the good cold pressed organic olive oil. Very healthy. Maybe some nuts and seeds. Some fibers. And that's it. Keep it simple. If it's, the simple thing is, if it comes in a bag, box, or can, probably shouldn't eat it. You shouldn't have to read a label. You should know it's a piece of meat. It's an apple. You know what it is. If you have to read 5 ingredients, probably shouldn't be eating it. You're right. Again, we all have to live. We're all going to splurge. We're going to have parties and events and stuff. I get it, and it's totally fine. There's ways we could hack that. Some pre-meal, post-meal snacks to kind of mitigate the damage. But for the most part, just eat real food and lots of hydration. A lot of us are just underhydrated, not getting enough minerals, electrolytes, things like that. So that could be helpful, especially in the summertime. So that's kind of how I approach it. And I go into more detail if needed for a lot of my patients. But for me, I think the simpler the better. That's one of the things I like to do, is just kind of keep it simple, because as you guys know, there's so much information out there and people are just confused. People saying, oh, I should eat carnivore, or I should eat all plant, I should fast, I shouldn't fast. People don't know what to do. So it's like, just try to break it down and keep it as simple as possible.
You just summarized my exercise physiology lectures. My entire course load, you just summarized in about 2 minutes. So
perfect. Hire me up, coach.
It's almost like stick to the outside aisles of the grocery store is what that's what I'm hearing, right? Just don't even worry about the center aisles, all the processed food. I mean, maybe grab some water, but just stick to the outside.
Yeah, stick with that. I think, most of us are magnesium deficient. So I think some minerals or electrolytes adding to your water, or just the good Celtic sea salt and lemon juice with your water is fine, to keep it simple. But yeah, just a lot of protein, a lot of vegetables. And like I said, it can taste good. You could be full and you're not going to be missing anything. If you get that sweet tooth, like we were talking about earlier, a square or two of dark chocolate is great. Sometimes I'll give people like little hacks at night if they get those cravings. Like I said, like dark chocolate or some good organic, cocoa is great for calming the appetite. Or I'll have people like drink a little mix of like some glutamine and some glycine amino acid powder with some water. That's really good for cravings too. Just little things like that. So there's all. You could have good food and be satisfied. It's not like you're going to be, I had to cut out this. It's like, and again, every now and then you're going to have some ice cream or a bowl of cereal or whatever, go for it. It's like, as long as you nail it 80, 90% of the time, I think you're going to be okay.
So you've spoken about the dangers of modern medicine and big agriculture. What do you think people need to understand that they're not hearing elsewhere?
Oh my gosh, this is going to be there's a lot there, man. There's a lot. I think big pharma is a big problem. I think big agriculture is, it's everywhere. Especially we've come more aware of in the last 5 years with all the stuff that's been going on, right? So food is tough. Like we were talking about, there's a lot of lot of interest in that to keep people snacking and eating this kind of stuff, and they make it cheap and this and that. So I think just recognizing it is number one, understanding it. And it's hard because I get it, eating real food, organic food is expensive. I mean, we go to the store, we spend a lot of money. The person in front of us, a huge cart of processed stuff for half of, they're spending half of what we are. And it's kind of frustrating, but it's hard. And then some people just can't do it. So just kind of do what you can, make do with what you can. If you can't get organic grass-fed beef, just get regular beef. At least you're eating something. But I think just really being more aware of it and just really timing your food choices as best as possible. Just do the best with what you can. If you have to, scrimp a little bit on, like I said, on beef, or, you have to eat some pasta periodically just because it's cheap. Fine. I get it. There's ways to work around that. But I think just being aware of it and just making the best choices you can. If you're going to get something like that, at least read the labels, because you can find it and they're still reasonably priced. So maybe it's a pasta or rice mix or something. But sometimes there's one or two ingredients you could pick out, like if it's got a seed oil in it or artificial flavoring or something, or a dye, you can usually find another option. It's not going to be too much more expensive. So at least eliminate some of that stuff, the extra chemicals, the seed oils, that kind of stuff, the artificial flavorings. If you can avoid that, I think that's a step in the right direction. In terms of medication, again, it's tough because, as you said, everybody can get a statin or a Prozac or something. And again, all these medicines, they have their place. And I tell people, it's not that I'm not going to use them. They just have to be used selectively at the right time for the right patient. But I think a lot of these medicines are way overprescribed. And it's not always the doctor's fault or the NP's fault. It's the system. It's just the way we were taught and the way we were ingrained. And big pharma's got their hands in everything. So I think just trying to use them selectively and seeing if there's another option. A lot of people are on medications they don't need to be. Or like you said, everybody's just put on a statin, or I'm anxious, so I'm going to get a Zoloft or whatever. And do they really need it? I don't think so. I treat a lot of veterans, and I see a lot of people with like traumatic brain injuries, PTSD type stuff. And a lot of them is just organic. It's because of head trauma. Their hormones are off because they're traumatic brain injury, and it's a hormone deficiency. It might be pregnenolone deficiency in the brain, or a growth hormone deficiency, or something else, and it can be fixed naturally. One of my colleagues is big on this, Dr. Mark Gordon. I've had him on my show, and that's all he treats is veterans with TBI. And he found all these vets are constantly like, oh, you got PTSD, here's your drugs, and it's out the door. And it's like, they don't really at all. They've got hormonal issues from trauma, from blast fire, from shooting their guns, and heavy metal poisoning from all the fumes, et cetera. It's all these different things. So there's always a reason. So if we could figure out why, same thing with the statins. Everybody's put on these things automatically. They don't really need them. They don't really have a great benefit. Especially if it's primary prevention. If someone's never had a heart attack or stroke, it's less than 1% benefit, right? Especially for women. Now, if they've had a heart attack or stroke, there's definitely a lot more justification for the usage. But I think a lot of medications are just overprescribed, and then they have a litany of side effects, right? So that it's kind of like what I was seeing in the ER all the time. So again, they have their place. But I think a lot of them are prescribed. So I think it just really comes down to awareness and just looking at your options. And if somebody's like, I'm getting migraines or I'm gaining weight, for me, it's always like, why? Let's figure out the reason why, as opposed to just covering it up, and see if we can fix it. And then we might fix it. And then you might have to take anything, even natural stuff. You might not even have to take a supplement. If somebody has a thyroid deficiency because of they're not getting enough iodine, or they've got a toxin, or they got mold growing in their house, or they're stressed, or they're just not sleeping because they got sleep. If we could figure that out and fix that, fix the mold, fix the sleep apnea, eliminate the stress or whatever, boom, problem solved. They don't have to be on anything. I mean, for me, that's the best solution. I'd like to get people so, they don't have to come see me. If we could fix something, great. But unfortunately, a lot of people have ongoing issues, right? They have for whatever reason, they have a hormonal deficiency and they need to be on hormones forever, or something that, can't be remedied. That's fine. But at least we could look for a cause. My joke is always like, it's a stupid joke, but it's kind of like, Doc, I got a headache. Okay, here's your Motrin. They keep coming back. We're like, why do you have a headache? Look at the back of your head. Oh, you got a nail sticking out of your head. We'll pull the nail out and problem solved. I mean, it's a stupid example, but it's like same thing with like people that have like heartburn or they're not sleeping. It's like, well, why? Let's figure out why. If it's because of an imbalance in their gut microbiome or food that they're eating, they're sensitive to, they've never been checked for. Let's figure out the reason why and see if we can fix it. But Corbin, I guess the short answer to your question is, I think just people being more aware of the options that are out. And I think people are getting more aware of like other treatment options, whether it's functional medicine or hormones or natural treatments or circadian rhythm alignment or meditation or whatever, looking at other options and seeing what else is out there. Those people are kind of aware of what's going on and like, oh yeah, there is a lot of crap in our food. I need to look at that. Or I got a lot of Wi-Fi going on in my house, and I have the lights on 24/7. No wonder I'm not sleeping. They kind of start asking those questions, start being the Sherlock Holmes of their own health, and kind of start looking for other solutions.
How did you get through med school with that attitude?
Right. I wish I knew all this stuff back then, Jeff. It's a different world back then. I'm like you. I remember those days because I remember growing up I was born in the 70s, so like 70s, 80s, like you said, when aerobics were everything. I remember the big low fat craze, right? That was for how many years, and it's like I lived that, because my parents my dad was always trying to lower his cholesterol and going through that whole low fat phase. And now we know how wrong that was, right? And the ship of medicine moves slowly. So yeah, it's we're learning a lot. Every year we learn more and more. But
yeah, last fall I had Dr. Robert Lufkin on the podcast. He wrote the book, The Lies I Taught in Medical School.
Oh yeah.
And
that's awesome. Yeah,
it's amazing just how poorly we're teaching medicine. And that's why I really encourage my students to go into medicine. It's like, I want you to be an exercise scientist going into medicine, because you're going to have you're going to have more of your mindset where it's, what can we do to fix the problem? How do we deal with the individual, as opposed to, here's a pill. I learned in chemistry or biology, just take a pill. There's a chemical that can fix this, but it doesn't really fix it. It just masks the problem.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and again, this, it may have a time and a place, but it shouldn't be a knee-jerk response, for sure. And I think it's something to be said for learning and changing. I've learned so much, of course, since then, but even now I'm still learning things now that I didn't know a year ago. And I think we should all be constantly learning and changing our minds. And I think that's part of the problem is a lot of people don't want to change their minds. Some people get really stuck on their identity as, you have to eat carnivore, there's no other way, or you have to do this exercise or whatever it is. I'm just making stuff up, but it's like people don't want to change. But I think you should have to be willing to change and learn and grow and admit that you were wrong. And it's no one's fault. It's just we learn new things, right? And we're all evolving and growing. And I think that's how we all grow together. We learn, and we all learn new things and learn from our mistakes. And as long as we tell people and help people out and spread the knowledge, hopefully we all learn and help each other out, learn and grow. I think that's just the name of the game, so.
Yeah. And so when it comes to things like testosterone and hormonal balance, how do you determine what's natural decline versus what's actually needing an intervention?
Yeah, great question. And again, I think it's become a little more prevalent, more common nowadays. Going back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of the world that we live in. I think number one, do you have the symptoms of a deficiency? And that could be a nuanced, detailed conversation, because a lot of these symptoms overlap. It could be symptoms of a testosterone deficiency, could be very well be similar to an overstressed individual, someone who's not sleeping, someone has a thyroid issue. There's a lot of overlapping symptoms. So you have to know the questions to ask and to find out. So it takes really more of a detailed, nuanced clinical evaluation. That's why it's not, a quick click thing. A lot of social media people, everybody's like, no medical training, giving advice on hormones and therapies. And it's like, it takes that clinician's ear and perspective to really dig deep on that, because there's a lot of mistakes made. And I just know because I see a lot of these people where, like a lot of my colleagues have, and they've had to be fixed the right way. So it really comes down to asking the right questions. So it's typically symptoms are going to be first, and then of course doing some testing, right? Some blood work or some other testing to figure out, look at your levels. Let's look at what else is going on in your body. And I think, as you mentioned, we all know that as we get older, of course, our hormones drop. So if it's someone who's, say, 67, they have a low testosterone or low estrogen or whatever, is that physiologic? It very well could be, but is there something speeding it along? Maybe. But if I'm seeing someone in their 30s and 40s and 50s, it's probably a little bit premature. And again, why? Why is that? Is it lifestyle? Is it sleep? Is it pharmaceuticals you're taking, the food that you're eating? So that kind of frames my perspective. How old are they? What other symptoms do they have? Their health history, their medications, everything. You have to look at the whole picture. And so it's such a long conversation. The problem is, again, I think we're all seeing more and more people at a younger and younger age with hormonal deficiencies. I'm seeing people, 30s and 40s with testosterone levels that normally I wouldn't see until maybe their 60s. And that's a problem. Again, I think it goes back to the world we live in, all the toxic world we live in, all the bad stuff in our food and nutrients depleted, a lot of stress, and all these other things that are compounding it, unfortunately. So it's been something I've been noticing for the last, 10 plus years. A lot of my colleagues have as well. It's a trend, which is unfortunate. So I think it's a little bit of both. I think as we all get older, of course, our levels drop, some things change. We start to lose a little bit of muscle. Our hormones start to go down. There is the kind of an expected decline, but if it's like all of a sudden instead like this, it's like, whoop, there's something going on there. So that's when we have to put on our our Sherlock Holmes hat and kind of figure out why, and unfortunately I'm seeing that, more and more nowadays, men and women.
And And I think a lot of times too, we focus so much on testosterone, but we ignore cortisol. And it's the importance of that cortisol to testosterone ratio. Yeah, your testosterone might be going down a little bit, but if you're controlling your cortisol, doesn't that seem to have a little bit more of a positive effect than just simply let's try and shoot the testosterone levels up?
Definitely. Yeah. You have to look at the whole picture. And I think you're right. I think if somebody's stressed to the max, that might be why, number one, their testosterone is lower. But more importantly, why are they having the clinical scenario? In other words, they're gaining weight and they're tired, they have no sex drive, probably related to stress, maybe bad sleep and all these other lifestyle factors too. I mean, yeah, the testosterone could be down, but if we can fix those other factors, get you sleeping better, lower your stress, that's going to help tremendously. And then all of a sudden, boom, you're in the classic thing that I see with my patients that I read about, and like when reading social media blogs for fun, it's like everybody's like, "Doc, I've got like no sex drive. It's like it's got to be my testosterone." Or they get checked and their numbers are great. They got great testosterone, so that tells me clearly it's not just the testosterone. And I know that, but a lot of people don't know that. Same with women, but it's like everybody thinks it's just testosterone. That's why I'm tired. That's why I have no sex drive. It's why I'm gaining weight. Not necessarily. Your testosterone could be great, but if your stress is high, you're on certain medication side effects, or not sleeping, or diet's off, et cetera, that's why, sex drive is a classic example because so many things affect it. And I see it all the time. More than likely, your dopamine, your neurotransmitter in your brain is off for many, many reasons. That's a whole conversation, but dopamine's off, stress is high, sleep is off. That's why you're not horny, right? It has nothing to do with your testosterone. There's other reasons. But I think, a lot of guys are so focused on testosterone. They think that's the fix all, and it's not, clearly. And I see that with thyroid hormone issues too. Thyroid hormones are very oftentimes underdiagnosed and misunderstood. But the same principle applies to what you mentioned with stress and things like that. Because again, if you've got a nutrient deficiency or a toxin, or your stress is really high, your cortisol is real high, that can totally jack up your thyroid. And you may or may not need thyroid hormone, but you got to fix these other things first. And that's why. And that often gets forgotten about.
So you kind of just answered my question, but what's the relationship between optimizing our hormones and sexual health as people age? And how can one completely optimize their hormones to the proper levels, not just that normal in-range level, but on the optimal side?
Yeah, the great question. And everyone's different, right? There's a huge difference between normal and optimal. I always kind of use the analogy of a kid in school, right? You could pass a test with an A, B, all the way down to a D minus. You could still pass the test, right? I'm like,
right.
Well, I want you to be an A student, not a D student. Same thing with your labs. You're like, thyroid hormone or testosterone, for example, say the range is 300 to 1,000. You could be, 310 to be normal, right? But you're definitely not optimal. Most people need to be at least the midpoint or higher. And it doesn't always mean the higher, the more is better. Sometimes it's not. And women get, usually understand, guys don't, right? Guys are always like, more is better, right? It's like, Doc, what's my number? I want to be higher. It's like, no, like, how do you feel? Because it comes down to genetics, and there's no easy way to test for it. There's something called a KEGG sequence on your DNA, and how short or long this is can determine how much testosterone you need. Some guys, depending on that length of that genomic sequence, they only need it a little bit. So they could be at like a level of 400 to feel awesome. And other guys, not so much. They need to be way higher to feel better. So every guy's different. So that's why it comes down to symptoms. And sometimes you give more and they feel worse. So more is not always better, for sure. So it comes down to, assessing like, how are you feeling? What kind of symptoms do you have? And when it comes to like sexual health, I think it's the whole kit and caboodle, right? The lifestyle aspect is big. The hormonal component is big as well, of course. I mean, yes, if your testosterone is down, it's going to affect your sexual wellness, your sex drive, your erectile function, things like that. Same with women. But like I've mentioned earlier, it's a lot of
same with women, erectile function with women.
Well, interestingly, the clitoris is very similar to the penis, if structurally and physiologically, if you look at it. So one could say they get their own little erection, which is kind of true, actually, but no, they not in the same way that guys do. But yeah, but it can definitely affect their orgasmic potential, orgasms, drive, libido, all these things. Definitely, same with men. But there's a lot more to it. Again, more than just testosterone. So all these other factors come into play. Like we were talking about a little bit ago. But in terms of like determining all those levels and how do you optimize that? Again, everybody's different. But again, it's that combination of symptoms and lab tests to kind of see where they're at, and then getting them to where they need, because everybody's going to respond a little differently based on the genetics and their lifestyle and things like that. Then there's always the interplay amongst all the hormones. They all have to be looked at. And it's not just testosterone, not just thyroid. You have to look at all the other hormones too, and how they're all playing together in the sandbox. And then, because they're like dominoes, you change one, it's going to affect some other things too. So you got to look at that as well. So yeah, I think you had another question about, was it sexual health? Did I answer a question? I know you were asking about sexual health too, but
yeah, I was just I was talking about the relationship between optimizing your hormones and sexual health in people as they age.
you're still thinking about the erections and the female erections and everything.
Yeah, I mean, well,
women are, obviously women are a lot more complicated than men, right? When it comes to sexual health, there's a lot more things that affect drive and things like that. So we all know that, right? But it is multifactorial for sure. A lot of it's just neurotransmitters in the brain, the dopamine, serotonin, prolactin, all these different things, which are affected by your diet, by stress, by all these different things we've been talking about. But the regular hormones, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, are very, very important. And that's another kind of a big misunderstanding too, with men and women. They're all important for women, but also for men. Actually, a lot of for men, like a lot of the benefit from testosterone comes from his metabolites when it gets broken down into DHT and estradiol. That's where a lot of the benefits come from. Like DHT is very anabolic, more so than testosterone. So very important for a lot of the sex drive, the muscle building, things like that. And when it gets converted into estradiol, that's what affects bone health, heart health, and body mass, or body fat mass, body composition, and sex drive. A lot of the sex drive and erection benefit and reduction of visceral fat comes from it being converted into estradiol. It's kind of a big myth. Everybody's like, if you read the bodybuilding forums from back in the day, even nowadays, that myth is still out there. Bro, you got to lower your estrogen, man. It's not good. It's like, that myth needs to die. It's been proven by hundreds of studies. It's complete opposite, right? The estradiol is actually what does all these things. It actually will benefit your sexual health, benefit your fat reduction, benefit your bones. So when you block estrogen, the guys that are taking these estrogen blockers, they actually, long-term studies clearly show the opposite. They actually get brittle bones, they get a visceral fat, they get erectile dysfunction, and all the bad stuff you don't want. So a lot of those benefits come from estradiol. So that's kind of a misunderstanding. But that's also, and then with women, same thing. That's why they need to improve as women age, they lose their hormones. They lose progesterone, testosterone first, and then later they lose estradiol. So with women, it's important to replace or at least optimize all three of them for maximal benefit, not just for sexual health, but for overall health, heart health, bone health, brain health, body composition, and almost in longevity, women and men, but definitely women, if you optimize all of their hormones, they're going to live longer, they're going to live stronger and better. So a lot of myths out there.
Yeah. Especially when you start looking at the women and perimenopause and menopause and the hormones there, just so much misinformation out there.
So much still to this day. I'll look on social media. I still hear people are trying to argue with me about stuff. I'm like, I'm just not going to waste my time. Like, it's just, it's not just my opinion. You look at the data and the science and the studies out there, and as well as all the, the clinical outcomes, it's irrefutable, but some people just don't want to change. Kind of what we were talking about earlier about learning to change and to grow and change. A lot of people have what's called a confirmation bias. You learn something and you just can't unlearn it. No matter what, new data clearly overturns that, but you just can't get it out of your head. I see that's common everywhere, but definitely definitely in the medical community too. You still get a lot of traditional doctors that have all these myths in their head about hormones or peptides or whatever, and they just can't unlearn it. Despite you can show them study after study after study, they just won't change their mind. It's that confirmation bias. It's unfortunate, but it's in every profession. A lot of people are guilty of it, but I see it all the time in the medical profession.
Yeah, it seems to be getting a lot worse when it comes to basically all aspects of science. There's just that increased amount of bias.
It is, yeah. People get stuck in their ways and they just don't want to learn it if they feel like they're, I don't know. I don't know if it's an ego thing, or they just don't want to admit that what they learned was not right, or they want to change. They don't want to change their mind. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Something happens. I don't know why, but it's just part of maturing. I think you got to understand that, we're always learning, and you're going to be wrong, and you're going to change your mind sometimes, So
yeah. I think it takes me back to my PhD studies and having a professor use the phrase, landmark study. It's like, yeah, don't give me this bullshit landmark studies, because those landmark studies are all there to be disproven, right. Because we need to grow in our knowledge. We can't just rest our laurels on one study that was done in 1968 or something like that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. That's what happens with hormones. Back in 2002, they had the WHI study. That's why so many people learned that, or thought they learned, that hormones are bad, right? It caused all these bad things. Estrogen, testosterone causes cancer and blood clots and all this, and they don't. That study was clearly undermined and shown to be completely wrong. And since then, there's been hundreds of studies, even bigger or better, disproving it. But people can't unlearn that WHI study. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's just stuck in their brains, so anyway, but yeah, you're right. It happens everywhere in science and probably every profession, I'm sure it's like that. So, I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, I don't have all the answers. I'm willing to admit that I'm wrong, and maybe things that I'm saying now that could be disproven 5 years from now. Who knows? And that's great. Yeah, as long as we're all progressing, we're getting better, and we're spreading some knowledge and helping people out, then it's all good.
I think the assumption needs to be that we are wrong. And then, just go with what we know and understand, but try and change that. And I forget who it was. It was one of the, like a famous medical school professor or whatever at graduation told his students that, half of what we've taught you is wrong. It's up to you to figure out what it is.
Right. Exactly.
I think my numbers are worse than that. It's probably more like 75% of what I taught you is wrong, but go out and figure it out.
Well, I think the other thing is that it's that N of one, right? Like all the things I've been saying, and we've all been saying and learning, it's like they're true, but everybody's different. There's that biochemical individuality, and for some reason, every now and then somebody has a weird reaction to something, or they don't respond to X, or they can't eat Y or whatever. Well, that's great. They learn, and everybody's different. Sometimes it does take a little trial and error, and that's where the trainer, the coach, the doctor has to listen. And if somebody's saying, "Well, it just didn't work," I'm not like, because I've had that too, where I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. This should work. I mean, it should not do that, but for whatever reason it did. And if I can't figure it out, I'm like, that's just you, N of one. So let's try something that works. Let's try something else.
Right. You get that principle of individuality, and you got responders, non-responders, and all of that. And that kind of brings me to the use of supplements. I know you use supplements quite a bit in your practice. How do you use supplements strategically in your wellness plans? And what do you recommend for people to avoid?
Yeah, great question. I try all kinds of stuff because I like to try it myself before I recommend it to patients, So I think it's easy to go overboard, right? I mean, there's a million supplements out there. Some people take hundreds of them or dozens of them. Other people don't take any. Again, it comes down to that N of one, right? I think for the most part, I think it's, again, kind of like hormones. Like, let's find out what you specifically need for your situation. Either you might, and can we get you off it at some point or not? Is it something that we can fix? Like a microbiome gut issue, is a gut infection. Maybe we do a hardcore blast of peptides and gut supplements for a month or two, and then once the gut's healed, we kind of let you do it with food and lifestyle and take it from there. Or it might be something you need to be on forever, depending on your clinical situation. A lot of people, unfortunately, we were talking about deficiencies in our food and our soil and stuff. Unfortunately, most people are depleted of like certain minerals, like magnesium is a great example. Most of us just don't get enough magnesium from our food. It's been leached out of our soil and so on and so forth. So that's something that I'll put most people on, probably gonna be on it forever. And there's really not a lot of downside to it. Certain vitamins, nutrients, kind of the same thing. Some of us just don't get enough, like vitamin K or vitamin D, right? Because we just can't be out in the sun all the time, or for whatever reason. So there's some things like that we may have to do. I think a lot of them are kind of, I don't want to say optional, but some things we could cycle in and out. So again, I try to find what are they looking for? What are their patients' goals? What's their clinical situation they need right now? If someone who's like flirting with prediabetes or insulin resistant, I may hit them pretty hard with hormone therapy. Maybe we'll do something to improve insulin sensitivity, whether it's dihydroberberine or chromium or alpha lipoic acid or something, some combination, or other insulin sensitizers. And maybe over time, as they lose weight and they improve, maybe we could wean them off of them at some point, or maybe not. Maybe get them off all except one. Maybe they need to be on one for some period of time for whatever reason, a gut issue or genetics or something like that. But I always try to keep people on the minimal amount as possible. And sometimes in the beginning it's a lot, and then we try to whittle that down. And again, if someone's, it just depends. Again, other things, if you want to optimize their muscle mass or body fat or their brain health, there might be some nutraceuticals that we can recommend for that. And maybe they like how they feel. If they're, stay on it forever. Like people are just always stressed and they're always doing a high powered job. They may need to take like theanine for that calming effect in their brain, and maybe some GABA or something, like a big dose of magnesium to help them stay calm so they can sleep at night. Things like that, or the insulin effect, or different things like that. So some situations they may need to be on some things, forever, because their lifestyle just won't change or can't change. But other things, if it's something that can be fixed, then they may be on a short term. So I use all kinds of different nutraceuticals. Again, it just kind of depends on the situation, but I find that I use a lot of magnesium, some of the fat soluble vitamins that people don't get enough of, like I said, like vitamin D, vitamin K, very, very beneficial for heart health, for bone health, things like that. Some of the prohormones that are sold as supplements like DHEA are very helpful, been shown in some longevity studies. has a lot of beneficial effects on health, and it's cheap, not much in the way of side effects. Things like that. I'll use a lot of B vitamins. I see a lot of people just getting B vitamin deficiencies for different reasons. So those are pretty inexpensive, easy supplement. I like things like collagen and colostrum, things like that are very beneficial for overall health. As we get older, we get, all kinds of joint issues and healing and soft tissue issues. So I think those are some things that people can take. They have a lot of health benefits on the gut and just overall mobility, functional movement patterns. So those are some things that can be taken pretty safely, and they're pretty darn natural, kind of like eating gelatin, right? So collagen, things like colostrum and stuff like that. I use a fair amount of. Those are some of the big ones I use a lot. And then again, it comes down to specific points. They really don't focus on muscle health or burning fat off or whatever. Then I'll target them with some supplements to kind of help with that. But yeah, I think as with everything, a lot of things can be cycled. You have to take these all every day. No, just do your best. And if you take them a few days a week, great. Just try to do what you can. But I'm not militant about it. But most there's a handful, like I said, I'll have people on all the time, all year round. But otherwise, I'll say maybe just do them for half the year, and skip a few weeks here and there, whatever. You just kind of rotate them in and out. Same with the peptides. I'll rotate them off and on throughout the year, depending on their goals and how they change, because their bodies change, their health changes throughout the year too. So that's why frequent reassessments of their clinical condition, their labs, kind of touch and go and kind of move and shake with them.
So I guess as our bodies change, now you mentioned earlier that there's a myth about estrogen. What are some of the other common myths around aging that you wish people would just stop believing altogether?
Yeah. That was a big one. The whole hormones like testosterone, prostate cancer myth is, I think, slowly being unproven. I think that's a big one too. I think, same with cancers, they don't cause cancer. They actually will benefit cancer. Optimal testosterone levels will actually help you and may or may not prevent cancer, but can actually improve your health. And even if you have cancer, you'll have a better prognosis. If your lower testosterone level are lower and you have, say, a prostate cancer, you'll actually do worse than compared if you have an optimal testosterone levels. A lot of pretty cutting edge, urologists are actually starting to use testosterone more, even with patients with prostate cancer, like Dr. Abraham Morgenthaler, a big, well-known urologist out of Harvard, has been doing that. And so I think that's a big myth that I think slowly people are kind of getting aware that there's no, it doesn't cause cancer, estrogen doesn't cause blood clots and, different things like that. So hormone myths are still out there like crazy. Those are some of the big ones that, estrogen, testosterone cause cancer and blood clots and Alzheimer's and all that stuff. And they don't. They actually will lower your risk, improve your risk more than anything. We talked a little bit about some of the drugs and the statins and stuff like that. The muscle thing a little bit, that whole, especially with my women, like, I don't want to lift weights. I don't want to eat a lot of protein. I want to get big and bulky. And like, well, that's a big myth. And it's still out there, right? It's like, it's not going to happen. You'd have to be taking anabolics and living at the gym to get big. Like these bodybuilders, it's just not going to happen to your average mom, if you're just eating more and hitting the weights 3 times a week. Those are some common ones. Excuse me. In terms of aging in general, I'm trying to think of any other myths. Those are still the big ones I talk about, really more of the hormonal side. In terms of the aging, in general, I think a lot of it still comes down to gut. There's still a lot of misconceptions about gut health, and then we're still learning. I mean, the microbiome is a new science, a new area that we've been exploring the last 5-10 years or more. So I think we're still learning about gut and the immune health connection. So I think we're learning more and more what the ancient Greeks and all of them have known for years, right? All disease begins in the gut and lifestyle, right? And I think we're kind of circling around to that.
It's the next wave, the prebiotics, probiotics,
right? Yeah.
Rooterized, they're coming back. It's like the next big trend of health right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the flip side, I think a lot of it can be done with food and prebiotics and stuff. I mean, the probiotics have been around for a long time, but I think kind of like pharmaceuticals, I think sometimes they're overused, and some people can actually get in trouble by taking the wrong probiotics. So I'd rather do it with food and prebiotic foods and stuff like that. Our bodies are pretty smart. They know what to do if you feed it the right things. If you feed the bacteria the right things, they'll take care of themselves. But sometimes you might have to fix something if somebody's got an overgrowth or an infection. We may need to fix that. But again, I like to try to let the body heal itself. Our bodies are very smart, and God knew what He was doing. Certain things, right? Like, why do we sleep? Why do we like late in the morning? Why do we need to go to bed at dark? Why do we need to eat certain things? Why do we need to stop eating 4 hours before bed? There's a reason, right? Our bodies are pretty intuitive. We've got to kind of give it what it needs instead of trying to fight and go against the grain all the time. So I agree 100%. But I think more and more we're learning more about immune system health, like the gut microbiome, like I was talking about circadian rhythms, kind of getting back to using light as medicine, using cold and heat as medicine. Light is a signal. We're kind of electric beings, right? And I think that's been around for a long time, and for many years people thought that was kind of woo-woo medicine, but there's a lot more science coming out about that. So all ties into our mitochondria, our energy systems in our body, how we relate to being beings of energy. That's why all this stuff has been around for thousands of years in terms of using sound therapy, using cold, using heat, using the sun, grounding, getting out in nature, all these different things to let our body heal itself, let our body's energy patterns kind of take care of itself. And I think that'll be interesting to see what happens over the next number of years as that comes out more and more.
And you have a background in microbiology, correct?
Yeah, that was my undergrad major, microbiology.
So how does that kind of inform your thoughts about aging and health optimization today?
Yeah, it has, especially when we're talking about like gut health, right? I think we're learning more about the microbiome, and not only in our mouth and our guts and everywhere. I think it's interesting. It was interesting way back then. I totally different perspective back then versus now, right? Learning about all these bacteria and what they do, and same thing. It's just I've learned so much more of what I learned back then. It's kind of like, oh yeah, I kind of remember that. It was a long time ago, but it's interesting because there's, if you think about it, there's more bacteria in us than cells in our body, right? They outnumber us quite a bit. So again, learning how to foster the right bacteria and not help the bad bacteria grow. What a big role that has, and not just in our gut, but everywhere. I mean, a lot of our bacteria in our guts can make vitamins and nutrients, right? People that have like, I'm lactose intolerant. Well, you can actually train your bacteria to get rid of that. Apparently, some people are talking about that, how you can overcome these food sensitivities by taking care of your gut bacteria in a certain way. So it's fascinating when you start reading and learning about some of this stuff. It's like, wow, so still a lot to be learned. I think there'll be new things, I think, as we go, but yeah, I think the perspective of that it kind of helped with a lot of these concepts that I've learned. So that now they're not so foreign. I think for, when I was in emergency medicine, I just learned that, infection bad, give antibiotics kind of thing. But now I know that there's a lot more to it than that. And if the bad bacteria are taken over, there's a reason, right? It's again, toxin, stress, or eating the wrong foods. Let's feed the good bacteria, starve the bad bacteria, and ways to do that. And if you do that, they'll take care of themselves, and they'll help us heal and help us to grow. Pretty fascinating.
So you suggested you were born in the 70s, correct?
Correct. Yep.
So you're obviously a little bit older than you look. So what are you doing personally to age so well?
Well, yeah, I try to practice what I preach, so I'd love to say, you could say maybe it's just good genes on top of it. My parents are the same way. They don't look their age, but they've always been pretty healthy, active lifestyle. So I think just trying to live the healthy lifestyle. I've always been kind of a health nut. I've always tried to eat healthy and exercise and just kind of take care of myself, so I think it's just accumulated over the years. It's helped keep me that way. And I think as I get older, I've learned I've had to fight a little bit harder to maintain that, right? The workouts and being a little sore or sleep, like you and I've had a lot of sleep issues off and on through the years, and trying to mitigate that. I think just paying attention to that, and then just, of course, practicing what I preach in terms of, supplementation, hormone optimization, peptide therapies, all that kind of stuff as needed. But I think most of it's lifestyle. So I really tried to dial in just, being consistent with my, going to bed at the same time, getting up at the same time, working out every day, eating clean every day. It's just like everything, right? It's just those small habits every day. Is just consistency is going to take its toll over the long term. It builds on itself. And
obviously, you allow yourself some dark chocolate once in a while and other stuff like that. So
absolutely, I love my dark chocolate. My wife makes fun of me because I'm always like, she's a great cook, and she doesn't like to bake as much. She'll do it every now and then, but I'm kind of like the little baker. Like I like to make my treats, but I'm always like digging and finding like these little healthy, quote unquote, healthy, high protein or just healthier versions of desserts. And I've been compiling like a little pages document, and I'll copy and paste them and change them a little bit. And so now I've got like, I don't know how many pages. So I'll be in there in the kitchen whipping up some healthy no-bake cookies or something, some kind of dessert treat. She's always just making fun of me about it, but I'm like, I still think they taste good and they're kind of healthy. They don't have as much junk in it, but so that's me. So that's my vice. I think, the sweets and probably, my bourbon. We like to drink bourbon every now and then. So we're kind of big on that. And I know it's, alcohol's, one of the vices, but, again, you got to live a little bit. So those are my two vices.
Yeah. You do it all in moderation.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. No more, none of the college lifestyle living anymore. I can't do that anymore.
No. So can we expect a Primex baking book to come out soon? Recipe book?
Yeah, I think somebody told me that my little list is like, you should clean that up and make a little, healthy dessert treat. So out of it, I might have to do that. So, I do have my own protein powder though. I sell on my website, which is pretty good.
I do.
I do have that, but
We'll
yeah,
have to
but
check that out, and we'll put links to all that kind of stuff too.
yeah. But yeah, I like that. Thanks for reminding me, Jeff. I agree. I think that little dessert treat, healthy dessert book or something would be kind of cool to do.
I would check it out.
Yeah. You and I have to collaborate on some dark chocolate recipes for sure.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
For someone listening that wants to feel stronger, sleep better, and perform better, where would they start?
Yeah. So, well, they need to come see me. No, no, it doesn't have to be me, but I think it's a kind of everything we've been talking. I think for me, again, I always like to start with like the free stuff, right? The easy stuff that they can implement without spending a lot of money. So, working on sleep, I think, is foundational. If you're not sleeping well, let's get you sleeping better. Number two is movement. Kind of tying into to rhythms, right? Like I say, try to get up same time every day. Go out and look at the sun for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Get outside and move, and try to get outside as much as you can. I call like exercise snacks, like frequent movement throughout the day. Our bodies are meant to move ancestrally, right? So if you're inside sitting all day in front of the computer, or you're trapped inside, it's not good. So if you have to be inside, like just set your, we all have our phones, right? Our calendars, just, every 36 minutes, get up and take 5 minutes and walk around, go up and down the stairs, squat up and down, go outside for a couple, do something. That all adds up. That NEAT, that non-exercise activity thermogenesis, that adds up for calorie burning. Obviously, I'm a big fan of strength training, lifting heavy things. So I think everybody should be lifting some kind of resistance, whether it's barbells, kettlebells, bands, power yoga, something, body weight, do something to work those muscles minimum 3 times a week, but preferably, at least 2, 3, 4 times a week. And then just get out and walk every day. If you and then eat real food, just eat real organic food as much as possible. I think if you do that, that's a great foundation to build on. Then just get those habits in place, and then start with that. And then we can build on that. You could, again, when it comes to like stress, I'm big, again, free stuff like breath work, meditation. We can all do some box breathing or close our eyes and focus on belly breathing. And we were talking about proper breathing earlier. So, we can all breathe, no matter how busy your job is, you can take a couple minutes to close your eyes and take some deep breaths and to work on stress. We can all go for a walk every day. If you have to get up 15 minutes earlier, do that, but you're not going to, if you just start with that, I think that's a great place to go. And most of that doesn't cost much. And then you kind of build on, once you get those habits in place, you build on it from there. If you want, okay, I want to put on more muscle. Okay, now we're going to really dive in on protein intake. Maybe let's add, look at your nutraceutical intake, and then maybe do some blood work. Go see a doc like me or someone who can do an assessment. Like, let's look at your labs. Make sure you don't have a hormonal deficiency or a nutrient deficiency or a gut imbalance, and let's work on that. We can start adding to it and sprucing things up. Now we can target our treatment approach to what you're looking for. I want to put on muscle. Okay, we're going to go down path A. I want to lose fat. Okay, let's go down this path, and we kind of build on it. So I don't want to overload people with like, we're going to do 10,000 things. And sometimes I'll give people a big plan, like, this is everything we need to do, but we don't have to do it all at once. Let's just start with the basics. Again, I like to keep it simple. So sleep, get your sleep on time with a circadian rhythm, get your sleep dialed in, move every day, eat real food, lift heavy things. I think that's a pretty simple template and then we can add on it from there. Then we'll dig deep and start adding to it from there.
I appreciate that you stress the free stuff first. Because a lot of people, it's like immediately, here's the list of supplements that you need to take. And
right.
You have a lot of people that can really benefit from healthy or behavioral changes, but it's like, I can't afford that. I don't have accessibility to that. And
right.
We neglect to really focus on the accessibility.
Yeah,
and so,
absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of people are, you might have some tight finances or tight on time. Well, you got to work with what you got, what I mean? And I get it. We can't all drop $1,000 on organic food, or can't work out for an hour, 45 minutes a day. You only got 15 minutes. Okay, well, let's work with that. Like you said, let's start with the free stuff, the easy stuff. And yeah, we could load you up with all kinds of, products and stuff. And if you want to, but let's try to do the easy stuff first, and we'll kind of build from there,
And speaking of accessibility, how can our viewers and our listeners connect with you, learn more about you? Is there a website, social media?
Yeah, for sure. Dr. Eric Primex is my website, DRERICPRIMEX.com. Probably the best, easiest place to find all my stuff. And then from there, you can find everything on there. I've got a ton of free stuff on my website, a bunch of free PDF downloads from ebooks. My YouTube channel has hundreds of videos and talking about everything I've been talking about, and you can learn for free. And same thing on Dr. Eric Fete on Instagram, Dr. Eric Fete on Facebook. Primex, I've got like two Facebook pages, my business and my personal, but I got a lot of have a lot of information videos there. So probably between those, you find a lot of stuff about me.
All right. So we'll share those links so people can connect with you. And this has been a fascinating conversation. I know we've got a lot longer than I probably anticipated. So we've taken up a lot of your time.
Yeah, no worries. It's been fun. I appreciate
I hope we covered everything you wanted to cover, and just kind of keep doing what you're doing, keep giving access to good, healthy behavior for people, and keep aging well.
Yeah, you too. You guys keep up the good work. You guys have a great podcast. I'll listen to a bunch of your shows, and I appreciate you having me on. So I do telemedicine in probably almost 30 states now. So, and I'm happy to help any of your listeners and check out my free resources. If anybody has questions, just hit me up. And I appreciate you having me on, guys. You guys have been great hosts, and keep up your good work as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for listening. I hope you benefited from today's podcast. And until next time, keep aging well.